Welcome in, everybody. It's time for All Texas Football, Longhorn Livestream on Sunday night. Thanks to the folks at Rogue Shop. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Rod Babers and Jerry Hamilton. Longhorns licking their wounds still a little bit today, including myself, dominated, in my opinion, by the Georgia Bulldogs, 30-15. The quarterback situation and offensive line situation at Texas leads me to believe that they could have played another 4 quarters, and I'm not sure Texas would have caught up with Georgia. The Bulldogs got after Quinn Ewers and or Arch Manning, whoever it was at quarterback, and the Longhorns just had no answers for a defense from the Bulldogs that really came out and attacked Texas pretty much from the get-go. Rod and Jerry, you guys have had a day to think about it a little bit. Rod, I'll start with you. Any follow-up from last night's post-game show that you want to think of or that you've been thinking about today?
No, actually, I'm more impressed with the defense. If you watch the actual game and then just look at the score, even if you just look at the box score, still the defense was really impressive. Because Carson Beck played one of the worst games of his career, and that was mostly because of the Texas defense forcing turnovers, getting takeaways, and the running game. Although I think Trevor Etienne actually did prove that he's an NFL back, and you can make the argument they probably should have given it to Trevor Etienne a little bit more in that game. But you weren't necessarily, they didn't impose their will with the running game. They didn't overwhelm you with the running game. They were efficient in the running game early on, but it was still, to me, it was more about the offense, the lack of complementary football, and the offense having a complete meltdown essentially at quarterback and on the offensive line. And when that happened, and your tackles probably played the worst game I think I've seen the tackles play. Kevin Banks don't have bad games. He didn't have a great game either. So when you're your best player on the team, when he has a subpar game by his standards, and then the most important position, which is quarterback, is also having a subpar game, I think that the entire offense kind of went down that same road, and it was a downward spiral that they could never kind of get themselves out of. And I think Sark was trying to get out of it with the Arch move. I think he saw it coming as a coach. I'll give him credit. He saw it. He felt it. Probably like, hey man, dude, we're about to, this thing is about to be a landslide. I got to do something to spark the team because my scheme ain't doing it. Our strategy's not doing it. I don't have a player necessarily on offense that's doing it. I think that's why he went to Arch. So whether you think it's a mistake or not, I'll give Sark credit because I think he was just trying to win the game in the end. I don't think he was thinking about quarterback controversy or, hey, how are we going to rationalize this or justify this in a week from now? I think he was like, man, I'm trying to win the game. And he said in the post game, he threw the damn scheme out. Like all their game planning went out the window when Georgia started pounding on him. And I think that's why he went to the Arch, option, which didn't work much either, but I understand why he did it. So I still think Quinn's your guy. I do want to say that. I don't think you need to right now be panicked and go to the Arch option right now, but I will admit that if Quinn has another off game, it might need to be a serious consideration. I did not expect to see Quinn play that badly. And
not coming off of what he did against Oklahoma.
No, it was shocking actually to see him play that badly coming off of that game.
He looked worse in the second half, guys, than he did in the first.
Agree.
He got pulled in the first. So that's why it's a lasting memory for me. Jerry, your thoughts, you and I talked a couple times today on the offensive and defensive grades. Anything you want to add to what you said earlier?
Yeah, look, I think it's twofold for me. Georgia, Texas is not going to see a front seven like Georgia the rest of the season.
No.
So, and all those sacks were not on the offensive line. You can argue 3 of them were on Quinn. You got to, if you're not going to play at a high level in the pocket against Georgia, what do you expect to happen? Georgia had 40 plus sacks, for the last 5 years? It's something, a number like that. They get after the passer. Here's the bad news. That ain't a defensive level of 21 or 22 for them. The Texas saw last night, okay? This is this year's Georgia defense. Now, Jalen Walker's a hell of a player. Will be an all-pro, I think, one day. But in Micah Williams, he still wasn't healthy. He was limping around half the game. But Texas is like A&M's got a really good defensive front, but they don't have Jalen Walker and Raylan Wilson and all the linebackers right behind it to where they don't have a Jalen Walker you can move all over the field. Kentucky has Deion Walker and some solid players. They don't have that front seven. So that's the positive I take from this for the Texas offense is you saw the best you're going to see in the regular season Saturday night. And it didn't go well, but it's not like, man, we're going up to Vanderbilt. Our offensive line's going to get their ass whooped. No, Vanderbilt's linebackers. Their defensive front's not like that. So, and Kentucky has Deion Walker, but they don't have a number of guys like Georgia has. So that's the one thing I would take away. On the quarterback, though, and this is the one thing I'm going to continue on and on with until I see something change, if I see something change. I love that Quinn is cool, calm, and collected. But if your feet don't have purpose, it is a hard position to play. And if your feet don't move quick and reactive with purpose, it's a very hard position to play at a high level. I love that the calm, cool, and collected, but those feet did not move in a reactive manner like a guy that was going to be successful against that type of defensive talent. The offensive line at times did their job, and they're going to get credited with a sack because Quinn did not react to what was happening around him in the pocket.
You know, I don't get this. There's a number of things I've watched the first half back just before we came on to get another recollection of the first half, and he escapes left for some reason more than he escapes right, and he escapes out over the top to the right and underneath and to the left, if that makes sense. So he has two different moves he likes to make, when sometimes just stepping up is all he needs to do and step into throws. I mean, that ultimately is my issue. Yes, that he was under duress. Yes, he was seeing ghosts a little bit. He was having a bad game, but he made it worse on himself.
Can't play off your back foot.
Yeah, he made it worse on himself. All right, there are people actually that played worse than Texas on Saturday. Believe it or not, the Texas offense. One of those would be Oklahoma. They fired their offensive coordinator earlier today, Seth Luttrell, no longer with the Sooners. 7 games this season. He was the coordinator for the bowl game after taking over for Jeff Levy. But Brent Venables making a move after the Sooners went down to South Carolina 35-9 on Saturday. Oklahoma, Rod and Jerry, they were down 21-0 in the first 5 minutes of the game after 3 turnovers, 2 of them being returned for touchdowns. Venables right now in some a little bit of hot water. I think that it's fair to say that was the largest home loss for the Sooners in something like 10 years. I am surprised that they're not talking a little bit more about the possibility of him getting relieved of his duties. Other things that we want to talk about today include some more on this Texas-Georgia game, but also the state of college football. Texas comes out, I believe, number 5 in the AP poll today. So they did move down from number 1 to number 5. The idea that Texas is somehow now a bad team, to yours and to Jerry's and Rod's point, is just inaccurate, but they can be overwhelmed and the quarterback play is there. Rod and Jerry, Brian Robeson yesterday or last night on the post game had a lot to say about this. And I know y'all both agree, Georgia made us play bad. This is from Kelly Horns Up. It was their dominance, not just a bad game by us. Yes, it was a bad game by Texas, but Georgia, their defensive front, to Jerry's point, their edge rushers, I was looking out, I was like, okay, we're supposed to be looking for 11 and 13. And all of a sudden I'm seeing 10. And I'm like, what? Who's this guy? And Jerry goes, oh, well, he's a 5-star from blah, blah, blah.
I went and saw him in high school.
So they have 3 or 4 Anthony Hill / Colin Simmons that are actually a little bit older, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I last night for me stressed how important recruiting in the Southeast region is moving forward for Steve Sarkisian defensively. And I sent a text earlier, but The starters or the guys that played on the D line and at linebacker for Georgia in that game, Christian Miller's from the state of Georgia, Mikael Williams, Georgia, and Nazir Stackhouse, Georgia. They produce so many D linemen, they turn down 4 stars every year. Tyron Ingram Dawkins, South Carolina. Damon Wilson, 11, the stud. I saw him in high school at Venice High School, stud. Rowan Brinson, Georgia. Xavier Cloud, South Carolina. You get the point. Jalen Walker's from North Carolina because his dad is a coach, and he coaches over there. C.J. Allen, Georgia. Chaz Chambliss, Georgia. Raylan Wilson, Florida. Smell Mondon's from Georgia. He didn't even play. They're all from the same region, man. I mean, and that's why last night, and I said it going in, I think the Texas fans will walk away from that game saying, whoa, those guys are really athletic, big, and fast. And that would be the first game all season where somebody could match what Texas has and is more talented. That's 5, 6, 7 straight class rankings averaging 1 or 2 is what that was. And
extraordinarily talented on defense, in my opinion, especially at the edge. Not extraordinarily talented on offense, other than on the offensive line.
The skill positions, yeah.
Yeah, the skill positions left a lot to be desired, with the exception, I think, of the running back Travis Etienne, who was a transfer from University of Florida. All right, we got super chats coming in. We got questions we're going to get to. That's what we're going to do tonight. But before we do that, Rod, do you mind telling folks who we're sponsored by each and every Sunday night? Our friends over at the Rogue Shop.
Thank you very much, Bobby. And we are very grateful to our friends over at Rogue Shop. Rogue Shop is bringing you real plant medicine. They're bringing it back to its roots just for you. Make sure you use the promo code ONTexas. You'll get a very special discount when you do that. The Rogue Shop has it all, folks, from oils and creams, flowers, gummies, vitamins. They got it all. They also ship nationwide. That's right, folks. No matter where you are in the On Texas football family, they can get their fantastic product to you. Go visit rogueshop.com. You can see right there and use the discount code On Texas. That's rogueshop.com, and they ship nationwide. And they got it all, folks. Use that code On Texas. Thank you very much to rogueshop.com.
Thank you so much, Rod, for doing that. Let's go to the super chat and get some questions here, not just super chats, but please fill it up. We got about 45 more minutes. We're going to go here taking questions, talking about the Longhorns and college football generally. KD35, I am the best. Upset we lost to Georgia, especially at home, though I'm not surprised. I am on how Texas lost. As we always say, Texas loses if it beats themselves. That's what Kelly said that, and I agree. Georgia looked like the better team to me. It wasn't just failed execution by the Longhorns. I thought Texas got beat on Saturday night by a better team. That doesn't mean Texas couldn't beat them if the cards run right. But look, Georgia's got the recipe, I think, to beat Texas, and that's that they have the speed to handle Texas's speed. They have the pass rush to get after Quinn Ewers or whoever the quarterback may be.
Yep.
I agree with KD35. I think, I'm somewhat surprised by how big the difference was at times, but you just got to tip your cap to Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, look, the one of the worst things that come out of that game, if you see them again down the line, is, Texas fans, we'll play much better. Yeah. Well, Carson Beck didn't play well. The receivers dropped 5 passes, 3 on third down for Georgia. So it's not like they went and played a clean offensive game by any means. I mean, Carson Beck is a turnover machine. He's got 8 interceptions in the last 4 SEC games, 3, 2, and 3 in those games. So it's not like Texas got Georgia's best offensive shot. They got their best defensive shot. But offensively, they still haven't executed at a high level. That was not going to be one of their better games this season, just from an execution standpoint. And that's not taken away from Texas defense. But there was the 3-4 of those drop passes were grass and no defender around them on those drops.
Yeah. All right, Jeff Fleming. Everyone who asked, who say if we have played no one at this point, are laughing their butts off right now, because they have been right all along. Yeah, we ain't going to face another team like Georgia to the playoffs. But what happens then? Right now, Texas better focus, first of all, on making the playoffs. The margin for error for Texas right now is razor thin. So anybody assuming Texas is going to get to the playoffs, I think that Texas may have been exposed a little bit on Saturday night. And so I don't know that everybody's laughing at us. We're number one in the country, got beat by a better team. I think that some people try to overstate that. I do want to ask you this, Jerry. Did that have any effect, in your opinion, on the recruits or the number of recruits on campus based on who you've spoken with so far today?
No, I've spoken with a few, and look, I don't know, not off of one game. I want to say there's a difference when I say no. But no, Texas had unbelievable atmosphere, as good as you will ever see, as impressive as you'll ever see. Everything the university did, it was tremendous. It was a great show for recruiting. I talked to one father of a very highly ranked player that said, even though Texas was extremely busy, they understand. They've been on the visits, all these places. Johnny Nansen still spent a lot of time with Tyler Atkinson, for instance, right? So, and Texas spent time with those guys, the guys on official visits, or the guys that were those really highly ranked guys there on two-day visits. So despite being everything all in for the game from a coaching staff perspective, they still spent time with the recruits that were needed on those guys that flew into town and were around. So no, I don't think so. Now, I will say this. Texas needs to, and I've said this all year long, Texas needs to get back to the playoff from a recruiting perspective, because then your program is still ascending. But kids don't live play to play, possession to possession, or game to game. One kid may have seen an opportunity at Texas on the defensive line, may have said, you know what? Hey, man, I can go in and play. They got a bunch of seniors there.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody at linebacker said, you know what? Well, Anthony Hill will be gone when I get in there. That doesn't look bad for me. Now, here's the issue you have is who you're competing with for the guys that you really, really need is Oregon and Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And you had a lot of guys in from Georgia for this game. And you know what? You know what Georgia's telling Tyler Atkinson? You're Jalen Walker. Well, that's pretty appealing. It's like if you're going, it doesn't hurt Texas in recruiting, but the reality is when you go east, you're battling Georgia for those guys.
Yep.
And Kirby's still on top of college football.
Georgia, LSU, Alabama.
Yeah.
And look, those teams have all won national championships in the last 10 years. Yep. So that's the way that looks. William Nish here.
I want to follow up with one other thing. Because people are talking about, the kids had something. How many times do you ever hear a kid say something negative about a visit? They're not. It's going to be a great show by Texas, right? They're going to put on a show. Texas is an unbelievable university, everything that goes with it. They're all going to say great things coming out of all these visits. But it's a lot deeper than that.
Jerry, I want to add this too before we get to William Nish's question. And I did not mention it at the outset, and I should have. You talked about Texas needing now to go back and getting back to winning,
yes,
and not letting this stew, so to speak, the bad taste in their mouth. Longhorns come out as 17-point favorites against Vanderbilt on
That's
Saturday.
Significant, by the way.
But yeah, that's a bigger line than I think anybody expected. But I think it's indicative of the speed Texas may have, right, and the fact that that Vanderbilt may not have that same type of defensive pressure. All right, William Nish, embarrassing loss on a national stage. Yours looked inept for most of the game. How do you fix a QB who's been in your system for 3 years now? You know, Jerry, I think this is the question that we get quite a bit, and had to answer last night, Rod, as well, right? Is what do you do about this? Because he's clearly not good enough if he sees a pass rush, a legitimate pass rush. This is not good enough. Not right now. Doesn't move well enough in the pocket. Doesn't really see the field quickly enough for whatever reason. Now, maybe he did against Michigan.
He did.
Right?
Yeah, he did.
And so why is he reverted? Is it his injury? Still worried about that? Getting injured further? What is it? And so, William, I don't know for sure on this, how you fix somebody that's been in your system for three years. Hopefully he starts really trying to push it a little bit and get down to the brass tacks of how to step up into the pocket and step into his throws and stop some of the things he's doing of late that are really harmful, not just to the team, but also to his draft stock. I'll put it that way. Now, I want to follow up with this, guys, and go right to it. Jack Burton, question. If Arch starts and finishes that game, do we win? As much as I just said that about Quinn, I think the answer to this is absolutely no. What do y'all think? I mean, do you think Arch starts and finishes that game, Texas wins?
If they start and finish it, I still say no. I think you get maybe an added element with the +1 in the running game because he can run a little bit. But against that Georgia front seven, you can tell, we talked about it last night and Brian brought it up, immediately the adjustment on Arch and his running ability, his mobility was, we'll put a spy on him and he's good. Don't worry, we take care of that. I don't know how long that will be an advantage for you if he started the game too. And then you're kind of back to where you were, the offensive line pretty much getting, dominated. And then, can Arch, now maybe Arch is quicker and with his reads and maybe gets rid of the football, where sometimes Quinn with open guys, he doesn't necessarily pull the trigger. And I have no idea why he's holding on to the football longer, but so maybe that's the case, but I still think you lose that game. That Georgia was a better team. That's okay. I mean, it's all right. That doesn't mean they're going to be better if you see them again in the college football playoff. But on that day, Georgia was a better football team all around.
We talked about it. We talked about going into the game. Georgia was playing for their playoff SEC live Saturday night, and they looked like they were
desperate.
They looked like that looked like a team that Kirby challenged their manhood for 5 straight practice days.
Mm-hmm.
I got to say this. That was extra emphasis. Oh, they're saying Texas is past you guys.
Yep.
Texas is the new king of the SEC. You don't think that resonated with some of those guys, particularly the ones on defense? Their offense, it didn't really look like it resonated, but their defense sure as heck did. Jay Lee here. I'm more and more convinced QE is not ready for the NFL and needs one more year. The problem is that it can't be at Texas. He can't read defenses. Do you think that's entirely true, Rod? You've studied Quinn and watched film on other quarterbacks around the country as they go into the NFL. Is this – I mean, I hate to say this. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, I don't think Arch Manning Ewers wins that game last night.
I don't either, but
not a pro prospect at all, because I think
that's he is a pro prospect, guys. And by the way, they overdraft quarterbacks these days. They ignore the downside of quarterbacks and only look at the upside. So if he doesn't completely melt down this year and get benched, Quinn will still end up being drafted. Now, if he melts down to the point where he loses his first round draft value, but he'll still probably go, in second round, somewhere around there. I think Quinn's leaving to go to the NFL after this year, period. I don't think he's gonna that's a hell of a trajectory to kind of derail your career, to decide to transfer from Texas when you were projected first round pick. So I don't think it's gonna happen. What I will say about Quinn is the scouting report has always been that he's a first read quarterback. If you can get him going to the first read, boom, on schedule, on time, in rhythm, then he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country because he can deliver the ball on the money, ball placement's there, it's accurate. But if he goes deep into progressions, which Sark has said that's what he wants him to do more of, right? I want you to go deeper into progressions. That's part of the pocket presence they've been working on. And by the way, he was doing that in Michigan, and he looked fantastic. It was amazing. It's one of the best games I've seen Quinn play. But now but early on in Quinn's career, he did have an issue when you would force him to go deeper into progressions. So, and maybe now, I don't know. It is not the first read. Like on that sack, guys, it's the strip sack, because there were a lot of sacks. The strip sack, right? The cornerback blitz he didn't see. Guys, there's a slant route wide open on the front side. I sent you the picture, Bobby.
Yeah,
it is so open. Like any high school quarterback would have hit that. I'm not joking. Like a high-level high school quarterback would hit that route. Like it was, and he was looking in that general direction. Now he's probably waiting on Gunnar Helm to clear, and he didn't see the blitz. But why not throw it to the open receiver? Like, why are we passing up open receivers, right, to try to throw to a deeper route down? That makes no sense, right?
Not on a third down play.
Yeah, it just. Yeah, that's a good point. Like maybe you got to get the yard, that kind of thing. I got to go look at it. He was. Oh, if you look at it, Bobby, how many yards did that slant route have ran for?
It was a few. I watched it. It was Silas Bolden actually that came in.
Did he have a lot of space?
Yeah, he did. They had moved a Mike linebacker over, but he didn't get there.
He didn't get there.
Yeah. They dropped him out of it. I think Rod's right. He's passing up guys that are open quickly because he's wanting to go deeper into routes. But I don't know that he has in a game like Georgia. That's one of the things in the reasons they're so good. You don't necessarily have that amount of time to sit back there and twiddle your thumbs. You have to get the ball out quickly. Roger,
I want to add something to the
hold on 1 second, Jerry. Roger G, hopefully that answers your question as well. Jerry, go ahead now.
I just wanted to add on the NFL stuff. Look, I mean, that was the worst possible outcome from an NFL draft stock performance. And he got pulled from the game against Georgia. Doesn't get worse than that for a quarterback.
So Ryan Nelson does a good job here and always gives us some good stats. There are two here that he gives us, one of which I think is misleading and one of them is telling. So this is, Ryan, this one to me is a misleading stat. Georgia has 285 total yards and Texas had 259. Yeah, but they weren't equal performances. Georgia wasn't pushing the ball much in the second half. Now, Texas defense played well. That's part of it. But Texas having 259 yards of total offense, not really. They had no consistency all night. And so I think that's a misleading stat. Do y'all agree that that's a misleading stat?
Yeah. Well, Georgia had guys open and dropped 5 passes, and some of those are on third down. So they killed their own drives with drops, not contested coverage drops. And Carson Beck's not really accurate. Carson Beck is not having a good season. He's got 8 interceptions in the last 4 SEC games, and he did not play at a high level either Saturday night. So, but I don't want to take away from what Texas defense did. By the way, Alfred Collins had his best game ever as a Longhorn. But what Texas defense did, Manny Muhammad was tremendous. And Makuba was really good in coverage. What Texas did in that game, though, they weren't put in adverse situations. They were put in your backs against – Rod's been in this. Your back's against the wall. You go out there, your back's against the wall. Next possession, your back's against the wall. Oh, you got one off the next possession, your back's against the wall. They held up to that because that game could have got really ugly in the first half if they didn't hold up. That's the most impressive thing the Texas defense did for me last night. But the flip side is they weren't going to play an offense this talented again because Georgia does have talent. Offensive line, 2 tight ends that'll play in the league on some level, even if Delp hadn't been as good as thought. Trevor Etienne will be an NFL running back. They have NFL speed at wide receiver. They didn't catch the football last night. They had uncontested drops in that game. They left a lot on the table.
One of them was made into a Jahdae Barron interception on the goal line down there. All right, this is the second one from Ryan Nelson that actually I think has some meat on the bone, so to speak. And I'll get your thoughts on this, Rod. I'll go to you. Jerry, Bobby, Rod. Quinn Ewers has a 63.9 Pro Football Focus grade this year, which ranks 230th out of 317 qualified quarterbacks. He had 6 turnover-worthy plays last night, the most in 4 years. What do y'all think about that, Rod? I mean, numbers are numbers, but poor quarterback play is poor quarterback play, and it's been 2 weeks in a row.
He's regressing. No, we don't know if it's a full-on regression. He is regressing, but is he going to stop the regression and then we'll see him start to look like the Quinn that's developed into what some people thought was a projected first-round quarterback? I don't, like I said, I thought the Oklahoma first quarter early game performance, I thought that was just him coming off the injury, rust. I think we're past the rust issue now. It's not rust. It's not rust. So we're either at it's an injury that is still lingering, that is changing the way he's playing the game, or it's kind of psychological where he is now kind of regressed in terms of the way that he reads defenses. And now I can't, because I'm not in that room, but it's obvious. The most I think alarming thing is that Sark don't know either, because that's why he pulled him. If you knew, then you would just address it on the sideline and correct it and be, let's move on, make the adjustments. We good. Look at the tablet. We got tablets now. We can show everything. It's all good. Sark didn't know. Sark looked him in his eyes and said, all right, get ready. Let's go. That was the more alarming thing to me. That was a man that he looked him in his eyes and said to him, you know what, man, you're a little too shook. I think you're gonna, if I put you back out there, I think you're gonna melt down even more. I don't see right now in you, I don't see the confidence in a quarterback that can lead us in this situation right now. Now, maybe in a couple of plays, series later, you'll look different. But right now, I looked you in your eyes and it did not inspire confidence.
That's why I said that was the worst thing that happened for his draft stock right there.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Let me go a step further with you guys, okay? Texas has been pretty prolific on offense this year. How are they doing it with a quarterback that ranks 230th out of 317? Is that Sark dialing it up? Is that the other pieces of the puzzle making the offense look good? What is it then? Well, that's a fair question, right? I mean,
it is. No, but he was playing. He was a different quarterback versus Michigan and a different quarterback before the injury. That's what you got to keep in mind too. We're talking about two different Quins. This is Mullet Quinn we're watching right now. I don't like Mullet Quinn. I like Quinn with the crew cut. I like that Quinn. Mullet Quinn is a different Quinn. That's the Quinn from previous years. And I think that's what the regression is about. I don't recognize this Quinn. You know, I do, but he's the Quinn that wasn't from the Michigan game. That was a different Quinn. Now, the question is, was there so much preparation and game planning done for the Michigan game before the season? Because it was such a big game that, you know, that's why it's like the Alabama game a couple of years ago where, Quinn's been practicing those plays for months. We knew exactly what we were going to do in that moment, in that situation. And then once you get into the actual season, it's more of a week-to-week thing. Now, like I said, and that game was crazy for a lot of reasons. Of course, because Georgia has, talent, or if not better talent than Texas. But do we know when the headset communication came back on?
Yeah, it came back on almost immediately. I was told.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Because that means Sark could talk to him too, and it still didn't settle him down. Right? I mean, I thought I was like, maybe that was a reason, but no.
Yeah, Quinn couldn't reproduce any of the positive things.
No.
There was no rhythm at all. All right. Thanks for that question, Ryan. And I hope you understand. I want to say this. I hope you understand, Ryan, not picking on you at all. I think one of them, but stats can mean different things. And I think the first one was misleading. The second one was it's a good discussion to be had there. Appreciate you contributing to the chat as always. Guys, this one from Torrid 717. Sack fumble inside the 12 against a team like Georgia is devastating. Play changed the entire game. How did Mississippi State produce more offense than us? This is a question that I want to get to. Mississippi State pushed the run more than Texas did against Georgia. They made Georgia try to play them. If you recall, this is something that I'm a big believer in. Texas is going to have to start getting the running game going sooner in the SEC. And what I mean by that is it slows down the rush sooner. And if you can get a couple of first downs early in the game by running the ball, it gives you a chance to kind of settle in. I just think that the idea that Texas is going to sit back and sling it against a group of people, a group of teams that can really get after the quarterback. Now, maybe not all as good as Georgia. That Mississippi State did not run the ball very well against Georgia, but they had the threat of the run that Georgia played to stop.
Okay.
Georgia didn't play to stop the Texas run at all yesterday, in my opinion. They didn't have to. So I think Texas has to get some run game going earlier in SEC contests to make people respect that.
I also think that some of Georgia's, Mikael Williams didn't play many snaps against Mississippi State. Jalen Walker didn't play off the edge in the same way he did against Texas. Georgia had a couple of Warren Brinson, a couple of those guys had been kind of in and out of the lineup. They were kind of trying to get those guys healthy. I think they kind of turned those guys loose a little bit Saturday too.
Yep.
Fair enough. I mean, that very well could be part of it too, Jerry. I mean, personnel has a big impact.
Hey, Jerry, one thing, Bobby, do you have the running backs to be able to lead with the run like that? That's the thing. Like you're a mash unit at running back. Anytime you give your running back too much of a load, they end up getting hurt anyway. Like, can you do that in the SEC?
I got a stat here just that was sent to me from our producer Matt Hutchison.
Oh boy,
Quinn Ewers. Yeah, this is not a good one. Quinn Ewers has a lower PFF grade than DJ Uiagalelei.
Oh God!
At Florida State.
Ow, that one hurts.
Pass
the Advil.
Are we serious? That's real?
I got a sudden headache. Oof.
Damn.
Just letting you know. Man. That's tough right there. Hey, this one from UT Horns SEC. Any updates on Bond, Makuba, and Wisner? The Bond should be okay, is what we're being told. Makuba, our CJ Vogel reported this morning that they still believe it is just a sprain as of this morning, not anything torn of any sort. But we'll be keeping our ears to the ground on that. Trey Wisner was taken into the locker room during the fourth quarter after the targeting hit. It was supposed to be his shoulder, though, not his head, not a concussion. We'll see what that means and what that looks like. If he goes down, guys, the secondary with Makuba at safety is already really thin. Jelani McDonald will be slotted in to start alongside Michael Taft, probably, with Jordan Johnson-Rebel coming off the bench. But if Wisner goes down, only two left are Jaden Blue and Jarrett Gibson, and Gibson did not see any time on Saturday night.
That's a pass.
Yeah, they could not trust him in pass protection.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
All right.
Hey, I want to bring something up real quick, Bobby, if I can. Sorry. Lane Seawright asked, what's Diego Pavia's QBR? I'm sure Matt will bring it up, but I wanted to throw out real quick on Vanderbilt because I know the chat also wants to talk about Vandy. Vandy is obviously ranked 25 in the country. Nobody had that on their bingo card. They're 4-0 at home with wins over Virginia Tech and Alabama. But some of the stats that I wanted to give, they are 46 this year in points per game at 29.5. They were 20.6 last year, one of the worst in college football. They're up to 367 yards of total offense. You say that's not very good. Well, they were 307 last year, one of the worst in college football. Third down conversion rates up to 44% this year. Kicker, really good kicker. You hope this game's not close, but he's 4 or 5 from 50 plus with a long of 57, maybe an NFL kicker. Defensively, they're linebacker-driven team. They're not a team that gets a lot of pressure up front with their up front players, their defensive front players. Their linebackers are their best players, their best playmakers. They have a couple of talented guys in the secondary at safety. But they're tied in Eli Stowers, a one-time A&M signee as a quarterback from Denton Geyer, but he was never really a quarterback. He's having a big season, 33 catches, 463, tore up Bama. Their running back, Cedric Alexander, is a sophomore from Austin area. He's their starting running back. They don't run it well from the running back position. Pavia's their leading rusher in that read option. Pavia, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception, absolutely playing, 470 rushing, absolutely playing as an all-SEC level quarterback. And you know what? With what we saw Saturday, you could argue he if they win 7 games this year, Vanderbilt finds a way to win 7, he may be your first team all-SEC quarterback at this rate. He's having that type of season.
He's having a better season than Jalen Milroe or Carson Beck or Quinn
or
Ewers.
Nico or Jackson Dart or all of them. He's performing better.
Yep. 16 people asked Lane, you asked. Pavia's grade as a Pro Football Focus ranked 16 compared to 230 for Quinn Ewers. All right, Paxton, with one of the things I think that was one of the keys to the game. There were many. Yep. Beck threw 3 interceptions, so that's true. But Texas got no points in return. I'll be fine being lucky number 5 seed in the playoffs. I think anybody would take the number 5 seed in the playoffs right now, Jerry, and go home after that loss to Georgia last night. But I do believe Paxton's right here. No,
they got one touchdown. They got one touchdown off of the last one, I think. Like one of them. Like what? That was one at the end of the right. The interception.
Oh, the 9-yard
They got one
drive.
touchdown. But you're right. But that was too late. It was too late. Y'all's point. And I agree with that. Like if they did cash in on those earlier turnovers with different games. So I agree with you. Yes.
The very first one was the one that Texas had to cash in on, getting the ball on their own on the Georgia 40 and 3 and out.
Yep.
And that's just, you can't do that if you're going to compete. Thanks for reminding me of that one, Rod, about the one that there. All right. Rick Amber guy asks, Jerry, you mentioned this. Was the significance of the loss of C.J. Baxter more evident in that game than it has been, or in any game going forward? What do you think, Jerry?
Going forward, see what A&M looks like at the end of the year. Their defensive front's really good, but from a pass pro and downhill run game, yeah, 100%, absolutely. I mean, I think the loss of Cedric Baxter, I think, a lot of the fan base is like, well, how good was he as a freshman? It's not how good he was as a freshman. How good was he going to be this year as a sophomore? The jumps these guys make from year 1 to year 2. In the building, they compared him to Edgerrin James.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big loss. And it shows up in a game like this. Now, who can exploit you like this? Probably one team.
Yeah. Here's one from Kevin Livesey. I think Quinn fits in the Big 12, but Sark's new recruits fit better in the SEC because of mobility. And plus, I don't think Gilbo plays the wide receiver screen anywhere as good as Barron. I tell you what, they preyed on Gilbo a little bit. They preyed on Manny Muhammad and Gavin Holmes at times in that wide receiver screen. They latched on a little bit in that. That was a play that Texas never really got a hold of. Those plays have been going for 4 and 5 and 6 yards against Texas. Rod, I think you were the one that pointed out last night. Those were going for 8, 9, or 10 on Saturday. I do think Quinn may fit better in the Big 12. A little bit more pass-heavy league, not as much heavy play action. We'll see.
The line of scrimmage, though, is different. You don't have the D linemen that you have, as Jerry's point, the front 7 defenders. You don't have to play against that every week in and week out in the Big 12. You got Oklahoma may have that, but that's about it. So that's a good point. I agree with that. That's probably true. The Gilbo thing, man, I thought the defense actually just, they gave up some plays, but man, you're talking about the top 5 team in the country. So I knew Texas was gonna, end up meeting like talent and then of course give up some plays. I still think the Texas defense, man, overall, just giving a grade. I mean, they played damn good. I mean, I got them. I got that as a B+, an A- grade for the Texas defense. We kind of watched the game and how it played out. Texas offense gave them no. Matter of fact, Texas offense put them at a disadvantage a lot of the time.
And the kicking and the punting game.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, special teams also, that was an off day because maybe one player was not focused, but still you didn't really contribute and you end up having some minus plays on special teams as well.
I will say this, Bobby and I talked about it. One of my takeaways was the Texas defensively played up to the level of a 10-2 playoff team defensively because they were put in real adverse situations in that game.
Yep.
And I don't think they're a great defense. I think they're a playoff worthy defense. You saw the difference in talent Saturday night. I mean, Georgia with their front 7 and the linebackers behind their defensive front plus the linebackers behind it, multiple guys all over the place is the difference there. But I thought Texas defense was playoff worthy. Now, that's going to be really big because Texas has road games, and the road games looked easier 4 weeks ago than they are now. LSU smoked Arkansas, so you just wonder about Arkansas. And by the way, Garrett Nussmeier's the other quarterback playing at a high level in the SEC right now. Ryan Nelson's right. But at Vanderbilt, at Arkansas, and at A&M, your defense can keep you in those games. But then it's going to come down to how you execute on offense, especially against A&M.
All right, got a couple comments here about Quinn. Justin Yarbrough, I have faith in Sark. He'll challenge this team and staff and improve. I just don't believe Quinn is 100% healthy. We need to come out and play how we played at the end of last year's regular season. They do need to build up to that, right? I get the feeling that they've kind of the last two games, even though they beat the tar out of OU, I still feel like it wasn't a great game because it wasn't complimentary football necessarily early on offense in particular. Maybe that's Quinn's health, Justin. I am not 100% on that, though. I'll just put it that way. Main concern from NU2 Sports, main concern is with Quinn not pulling the trigger. Hasn't pushed the ball downfield much in 2 games back. And when he's tried, it's underthrown. He is injured, guys. That's 2 people back to back. I think he's He may be. Not only did he underthrow Isaiah Bond deep early that almost should have been picked off, he underthrew Matthew Golden 10, 15 yards.
Yep.
Golden came back and made a nice play on it. What do y'all think? You think Quinn's injured, maybe, guys, or no?
It's honestly that is to me as realistic a possibility as anything else because I don't have a good reason for the regression. An injury would make a lot of sense, but and if that's the case, then why would Texas say that he's basically healthy and back to 100% if he was still injured? Like what's happening in practice is what we need to know. Like is this the same? Are we seeing things that now in the field that are also things the coaches are observing in practice? Or is this in the game he's melting down? If that's the case, then it's more of him. If it's in the game, but it ain't in practice, you're not seeing this hesitation and this indecision. You're not seeing that in practice, then we're talking about something happening up here. And that is scarier to me. I'd rather him be injured and be like, okay, now I got a reason for the regression. That makes sense. But we're talking about now him having, some kind of mental block. That's challenging. I don't know what to do with that. That's a different issue altogether.
This one from Chris Jackson. Thank you guys for what you do. Does Georgia go undefeated the rest of the season and win the national championship? They've got to get better play from their quarterback to do that because Kirby circled this game against Texas. Let's get real.
Yes.
Yeah, he did.
Okay. So somebody like an Ole Miss that Kirby may not have circled, like even a Florida. Kirby hadn't been thinking about defending DJ Lagway as a runner. And that can be Kirby's defense's kryptonite, a runner at quarterback. We'll see. They've got to get better help out of their offense, I think, to be a national championship caliber team. Do they have the most defensive talent Texas will see, or 9 out of 10 teams we'll see in the country? Yep. Yes. End of story, period. All right. This one from Damon Raybon. Sark has to get better on money downs. PK playing bend but don't break on the 3rd down, backed up by their end zone, was a terrible feeling that game. Sark has to get better on money downs. Texas last night, I believe, what was the final on 3rd downs?
I think they got 1. I believe it was 1 3rd down conversion.
1 of 15.
Yeah. Yep. They were. Yep. They were 2 of 15. They were 2 of 15. There you go, 2 of 15. So.
And Georgia was 6 of 17 with I think 3 drops on 3rd down.
Yeah, you include the 4th down. Texas was 3 of 20.
All right, they got to get better on offense. With PK though, I would say this: they actually blitzed on 1st down. He mixed up the blitzes heavier than maybe you think. Mm-hmm. Of course. On that big key 3rd down conversion, Manny Muhammad got shook a little bit after playing a really good game overall. That was just a really good route and throw, in my opinion, because it was man coverage and Manny got beat. Just a little bit, but enough. Jose Rodriguez, good evening, gents. I'm not sure if it's already been discussed, but were the OLSU's blocking scheme or just getting beat? Also, Blues usage was mismanaged. I think it was a combination of getting beat at times. I don't think it was scheme. I think that Kelvin Banks and Cam Williams got beat. I do think that they had to set up with wider pass rush sets because Quinn wasn't stepping up in the pocket and they were still getting around them to Quinn. Quinn has to step up to give those guys a better chance. As far as Blues usage mismanaged, look, he had 7 catches for 48 yards, but didn't have a single carry on Saturday night.
Yeah. Sark admitted. Sark said it wasn't by design. He said the game plan got thrown out when they got overwhelmed early. He threw the game plan out, and they started throwing it to Blue in that manner. So he did say that was not part of the game plan. Blue not getting rushes. I think they had some rushes in there for him, but the running game, all that kind of went out the window after they got down 3 touchdowns, pretty much, whatever else.
I'm not disagreeing with Rod, but I do wonder if Sark wanted to hand the ball off to Jaden Blue in between the tackles against Georgia's players.
Yeah, that's very, very big possibility. Did Quinn not have 2.5 seconds to climb the pocket and hit those crossing routes? It isn't entirely on the O-line. He can't pull the trigger. He certainly didn't last night, Keith. Not often enough. And he didn't always have 2.5 seconds either.
No.
When Georgia brought the house, they got home a lot of times. So I think it was anybody laying that completely at the feet of Quinn is inaccurate. Anybody laying that completely at the feet of the offensive line is inaccurate. I mean, look, Gunnar Helm got blown up on 1 pass protection. Jade Blue got blown up on 1 pass protection.
Yep.
It was pass protection as a whole that had issues, especially when they brought numbers. But on top of that, I do think Quinn had time at times and either was seeing ghosts, not stepping up, or just flat getting. I don't like he got out of the pocket one time on a 3rd down, and the pocket was completely clean. All he had to do is sit back there and wait for somebody to come open, and he went ahead, escaped left.
Yeah.
And I didn't get it. So thanks, Keith, for the super chat, by the way. Thank you all for the super chat. Brandon, does anyone believe Quinn is a leader of men or a force multiplier at his position? I believe Arch is both. Quinn could be in certain situations because he throws such a clean, pretty ball when he steps into it and is very, very accurate.
Yep. I agree with that.
So I think he can be a force multiplier at certain times. This whole leader of men thing, we're not in that locker room. Let's be clear about that. Arch may be indeed both long term, but right now, Sark's not trying to lose these games or this game. I can promise you, if he thought he had a better chance to stick with Arch and win that game, he would have done so.
Agreed.
Yeah. I want to say this about that question, though. Rod, going on the road after a loss, after you don't play well, Quinn has got to bring out all the emotion and fire he has this week for his team.
Yep, because they're going to be looking for it. They're going to be looking at him. They're going to be looking for signs of him being insecure, right? Of him lacking confidence, lacking composure, poise. These are all things that he did not necessarily exhibit versus Georgia. The team needs to see during the week in practice. And like you said, Jerry, and I totally agree, on game day, they have to see it. Guys, I lived through one of these. And I hope that they don't have it. I pray that they don't have to deal with it. I really do. But it does seem like it could be trending that way if Quinn doesn't turn around his play. And I was in that locker room, you can actually have a split locker room where different guys agree and disagree on who gives you the better chance to win. That's what it's really about. It ain't really about who the starting quarterback should be. It's all about, man, who everybody wants to win in that locker room. All right. Who gives us the best chance to win? Some guys thought it was Sims. Some guys thought it was Major. That's what you don't want. You want to try to avoid that. And I think for Texas right now, that's going to be Sark's challenge to avoid that, because you don't want to, like I said, if you have a quarterback controversy, it's like an election. Nobody wants a contested election, right? Can divide a country. A contested quarterback controversy can divide a locker room just as easily. Right? You don't want that. And I think
that can lead to more losses that are unnecessary.
It's imperative. It's imperative for Texas season with Quinn at the helm that he plays really well in the first half against Vanderbilt.
I agree.
Imperative.
Either that or he may not be the quarterback in the second half.
That's right. That's what it's coming down to. He's got to respond.
Yep.
And Vanderbilt doesn't have the talent Georgia has. He should have opportunity.
Yeah. Slick Rick. Quinn took the sack at the goal line with 5 seconds to throw. B-Rob said it best. He's stuck on his first progression. He's playing scared. Sark needs to coach this week and put Vandy to bed early. We mentioned earlier in this segment, Jerry, or this episode, and Rod, that the Texans opens Vegas today with a 17-point line in favor of the Longhorns. That's crazy. That's crazy when you say the better quarterback wins the majority of college football games. And right now, Vandy may have the better quarterback.
At home.
Yeah. Well, there's only 29,000 people in the stands. So Vandy is working. By the way, I got to say this. Vandy right now, for those unaware, are having a lot of construction done to their stadium. I literally think you might be able to get 29,000 people in there on Saturday.
That's great for Vandy. That means that's great.
Ewers played in front of more than that in his high school championship game.
Yeah.
So
that's actually great for Vanderbilt because the opposing teams can't get all the tickets.
Yeah.
You're right about that.
Paxton's on a kick right now. He's mad about not getting more points off turnover. Beck was terrible. Yes, he was. Well, terrible is relative because I think he outplayed Quinn Ewers, even though he had 3 interceptions. So Beck may have been terrible, but relative.
Well, and by the way, as good as Georgia, talented as they are, and maybe they just roll through the rest of their schedule. But if Carson Beck has 3 interceptions against Ole Miss, 3 interceptions against Tennessee, if he plays at that level, that Georgia could get beat again.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I think they're not perfect. Georgia didn't turn the ball over inside their own 20 twice. That's correct, Huey.
Correct.
Although they did turn it over once. Jahdae Barron got back to the 9-yard line. But to your point, look, the Texas defense played well enough and held enough, forcing 3 field goals.
Come on, man.
In the first half. That's good. So they play well enough. Douglas Scott, our first read quarterbacks successful in the NFL, Rod. I just watched Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes today.
And
it's terrible.
They were both their 3rd and 4th reads as well as anybody.
Yeah, they both had bad games today too. Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes. Tua is actually, strangely enough, and I know people have remarked that Mike McDaniel was actually watching Quinn at Texas last pro day, and he was a little too close. It was like violating his personal space because he was looking at Quinn. And he studied, actually. He had studied Sark because of Sark, obviously coaching Tua. He's looked at some of the schemes that were able to maximize Tua's skill set. Tua was known as being kind of a one read guy, kind of wide window thrower. And they have kind of worked to – Mike McDaniel did a good job of kind of working that RPO game and working with those scheming open a lot of those first reads with a ton of pre-snap. But nobody uses pre-snap motion more than the Miami Dolphins. All right, that's a lot of that is scheming guys open, scheming targets open for him. So Tua knows where he's going with the football. It's not all that place. I mean, they obviously have progression-based passing attacks, but he's one of those quarterbacks that's known for being a first read guy, or at least he was coming out of college.
All right, got a couple more to get to here tonight. Brad Bean comments, or Bean, please. I'm a Longhorn fan and a Cowboy fan, and I see Quinn and Dak the same, and I'm standing on that.
Wow.
I hope Quinn becomes as good as Dak and moves.
I'll take it.
But the issue is that, and I will say this, they seem to have a they don't always make the big play. I'll put it that way in key crunch moments or stand up to some issues. Paxton again. UGA scored points off Texas turnovers. Texas couldn't score off Carson Beck turnovers. He's continuing to get a hit on that in this.
I want to say Texas scored like 7 points. Georgia only scored like 10 points off those turnovers, right? Because Texas defense would respond. You had a Georgia interception, and then at the Georgia interception, right? Texas, it was a punt for them.
No, they scored more than that because they scored on the fumble from Arch before the half.
That was a touchdown.
No, it wasn't a touchdown. That was a field goal right before half to make it 23.
Okay.
They had the fumble off of Quinn that I think was 7.
It was 17.
Yeah.
17 points. Yep. Hey, Fred, this is for you, Jerry, and I think there's a couple of comments in here about recruiting. Fred 90s Caddy Johnson, got to start hitting on the big DL. Hold on a second, Jerry, before you mention that. I want to add another one to it. This one from Kabir Hussein. How will our performance affect recruiting?
I don't think it affects recruiting as a whole. As long as Texas goes on and makes the playoffs, wins 10 games, get in the playoff. Before the season, my prediction was 10-2 because I just said the best thing Texas can do is get in the playoff this year. Once you get in the playoff, see what happens. But I said that I always think from a recruiting standpoint first is like getting to the playoffs 2 years in a row, continuing to ascend as a program, arriving on the national scene as a program. That is really the key thing to following up last season so people don't say, Texas just had one good year. Look what they did. They went 8-4 the next year in the SEC, long road ahead of them. If Texas just goes on 10-2, makes the playoff, sign a fourth straight top 5 recruiting class. That's going to happen. Where recruiting gets a little more interesting, there's a lot of Justice Terry comments in here. The 5-star from Manchester, Georgia, which is closer to Columbus, between Atlanta and Columbus, Georgia, but closer to Columbus. The key with those things is, Georgia did go into Texas and win that game, and Texas is trying to get established recruiting in the state of Georgia. The key to know in the state of Georgia is if it's a player Georgia feels like they have to have, they don't lose those guys very often. You'll know on Justice Terry where he ends up if Georgia thinks that. Georgia's got Elijah Griffin, 5-star out of Savannah area on the D line. They don't lose many of those battles since Kirby's been there.
All right.
And that's going to be the key recruiting there. So it's a caveat. Texas is fine in recruiting. They put on a great show. Nothing's lost. They got guys leaning their way. They put on a great show. Texas is ranked in the top 5, went to the playoff. But then when you get into Texas wants to establish themselves in Georgia. Well, Georgia won the game. Now we'll see who Georgia really covets the most in their state.
Yeah, good stuff, Jerry. Brandon Huey, it was good seeing you on Saturday, buddy. Name 3 other schools that wouldn't take Quinn right now. I'll wait. To say Quinn isn't an NFL player is ludicrous. He would start for 5 NFL teams next year. Here's where look, Quinn does not play well under duress, in my opinion. If you have a clean pocket, Quinn is, I think, really good quarterback. But if you could get after Quinn, I think he, at least of late, I'm not including the Michigan game, has not looked real good. I mean, is that where y'all are at on this? I mean, I just don't know. There are 3 schools that probably wouldn't take Quinn right now. I mean, Oregon wouldn't. I mean, would they? Y'all think?
No, not right now. Well, they paid a big time. But I just think ultimately for Quinn, it's not, it's really about what's causing the regression for him. So I don't think he needs to, I don't think any of the possibilities for Quinn in terms of him going to the NFL right now should be, and where he's going to get drafted, any of that should be the primary concern, because that draft stock is dropping like precipitously. Yeah. He's got to focus on, can you just go out there and keep your starting job? You know what I mean? Like that's where he is right now. So Quinn's got to get back to basics, and we got to quit all the pie in the sky, Heisman, first round, first quarterback off the board. Man, we done with all that. We getting back to the basics. Can you, like Jerry said, can we go out there? You play a quality first half of football versus Vandy. That's where we are now. That's where we are. That's what scouts want to see. And if scouts don't see that next week, y'all can figure out all this pie in the sky, first round pick stuff. That stuff could eat. And we've seen it before, guys, with a lot of guys. Remember, Spencer Rattler at one point was going to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. See how that went. I remember seeing Brock Purdy.
That's who he is reminding me.
Yeah. Exactly.
Rod, that's who he's reminding me of right now, with the way he's getting scared in the pocket and throwing off his back foot and thinking he can do everything with arm.
Yep. But to that point, Bobby, Spencer Rattler is starting right now in the league, though. To the point about the goal, he's starting right now in the league. So to that point, when he said Quinn can't go to the NFL and be an NFL quarterback, hell, but it could easily happen. But my point is, right now, I don't know if he's gonna live up to all the expectations. But Spencer Rattler is starting right now, and actually ain't playing. I haven't looked at him this week, so I don't know. But last week didn't play terrible.
No, he didn't. I watched the game.
Look, I think one interesting thing about quarterbacks, college versus NFL, and I'm not saying this is the case with Quinn, just in general, being a playmaker is so much more important in college. Just a natural playmaker at the position, because you can do that in different ways that don't translate to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be a playmaker in college. You got to have some sort of playmaking in you. And Dylan Gabriel's a playmaker. He's not going to translate to the NFL, but he is a playmaker at the quarterback position. The guy Texas is playing against, Diego Pavia, he was at New Mexico State. He's a playmaker. It may not translate to the NFL for him, but in college, those guys are insanely valuable to an offense.
It's true.
In the NFL, you have the best around you when you're the quarterback, and the best schemers and the guys who don't have limited hours in a film room. So college, having a playmaker is very important in college. Look at Oklahoma right now. They would give anything to have a playmaker at that position right now.
Well, they thought they did as a freshman.
Yeah,
but he's a true freshman with
for those that are just now checking in on the chat and on the live stream. Oklahoma fired offensive coordinator Seth Luttrell earlier today. 7 games into this season, he was let go after losing 35-9, scoring only 1 touchdown against South Carolina on Saturday. That has been 3 pathetic performances from the OU offense back to back to back. So he is out in Norman. Hey, Rod, we've got about 4 or 5 questions. We've got time for them before we let folks go. But I also want to say thank you once again to our sponsor, RogueShop.com. Would you do the honors, please?
Yes, sir. Appreciate that, and appreciate our friends over at RogueShop.com as well. Rogue Shop is bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. Make sure you use the promo code. You see it right there on the screen on Texas, and you'll get a very special discount from our friends over at Rogue Shop. They have it all from oils, creams, flour, gummies, and vitamins as well. And one of the great things about our friends over at Rogue Shop, they ship all over the country, folks. Ship nationwide. So no matter where you are in this great nation of ours, if you're part of the On Texas football family, you can get the great products from Rogue Shop shipped right to your door. That's RogueShop.com. Be sure to use the code On Texas, and you'll get that very special discount. They got it all, folks. Go check it out. RogueShop.com.
An astute comment here from our friend Rome77. I'm sorry to say, but having a hype backup is never a good thing. Rod, this leans into what you were talking about with Chris Sims and Major Applewhite. It's either Quinn's team or Arch's team. Sad, but last year was Quinn's year. Expect him to be playing for another team next year. I don't know that it'll be at OU.
Wow.
But yes, look for him. He will go on, and he's going to go to the league. But I get what you're saying. Never good to have 2 quarterbacks. That just means you have none. Hosey, 11. Overreaction Sunday. We weren't going undefeated. Georgia was the better team yesterday, and we were humbled. This team will learn, improve, and respond. Let's hope that's the case. That's what this is all about, right? If they want to go to the playoffs, Jerry's just talking about it. They want to go to the playoffs, they have to come back. They can't just sit there and pout. Get back up, ride the horse, man.
The measure of any team ultimately is how they respond to adversity. Rod, that's what coaches are looking for. Rod, if you get beat deep twice in the first quarter of a game, how do you respond?
Yep.
The next time somebody goes vertical on your butt after you got beat twice, right? How do you respond? This is the ultimate. Sark talks about culture all the time. This is a culture game coming up Saturday in Nashville for Texas. They've played 2 physical games in a row. Obviously, blowing out Oklahoma helps. You didn't have to play as many snaps with your starters. But there's a lot of sore bodies today in Austin because Georgia was bringing pads. And I talked to somebody who was on the field that wasn't a player last night and said it sounded different when Georgia hit you than when Texas hit Georgia. They played against the biggest, fastest team in college football. This is the ultimate culture test and how you respond to adversity. This is the first time this Texas team has really had to respond to adversity. They had to last year. They passed that test. This year, this is where your culture is defined. in practice this week and in Saturday in Nashville.
Love it. Yep.
You mentioned Saturday in Nashville. Rod, I want to ask you this one. What does Sark and company do now? How does he correct deficiency? How does he prevent this loss from beating the team twice? Thanks, Amars.
I think number one, you got to figure out quarterback. You're a quarterback. You're the quarterback whisperer. You're the guru. Everybody gives you a lot of respect for your ability to develop quarterbacks. You got to figure that thing out. You got to figure it out quick. Whatever. And maybe it is just making the offense more balanced. Like you said, maybe we just don't go with the early high pass rates in the game and run the offense through Quinn. Maybe it's more of a balanced offense, and we take more of the burden off of Quinn. I'm not sure what it is, but coaches, I would say coaches are just problem solvers. You figure out the problem, now go solve it, and that's on Sark. So I think quarterback number one, and then leadership after that, because Jerry's right. It's a culture week. So the leadership that's now going to have to lead this team after facing adversity. A lot of these guys never really seen it in this form. Getting beat like that by Georgia at home, by the way, biggest home game in Texas football history. I think the leaders now in this team want to step up. And one of your leaders is right now, he's struggling, right? The natural leadership position, Quinn's struggling. So I think the leadership is going to be key this week, because I think right now there's a bit of a crisis with the leadership, because your natural leadership position is going through it. You don't really know if Quinn right now is ready for that burden, to handle that burden on the road. He needs to be, but you don't necessarily know that.
Jeff Carey with an astute comment here. One of the great answers to a great pass rush is a power run game, and we can't do this. Here's what I would say. They do not have the ideal running back to do it, but they have an offensive line to do it.
Yep.
And you watch the Kansas City Chiefs, for example. They have Kareem Hunt, a little bit different. But Isaiah Pacheco is not a power runner. You can run power with a smaller running back. They just have to be willing to stick it up there in there and go a little bit. Lane Seawright, thank you guys. It was a tough loss, but the way y'all break it down always gives us hope. Not just hope. I hope it's not just hope. I hope it's realistic at all times. We've been a little hard tonight and today, and even last night, as well as many fans have, on the Texas offense, complimentary of the Texas defense. But more than anything, I think everybody wants to see Texas turn it around. After this loss, what are they made of? Really, are they going to go to Vanderbilt and take care of business? John Rafferty, I think I saw you yesterday at the tailgate. Nice to meet you. Putting aside the Dasani incident, what's the feedback been on the DKR environment last night? Georgia fan sitting next to us said DKR was better than the Athens environment, although Georgia was winning. Of course, they might say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Gary, you were there.
Yeah, I thought it was unbelievable atmosphere. And so I was standing in Moncrief area where the recruits would come in. They drop them off in shuttle buses. That's also where the Georgia parents and fans were kind of congregating, because the Georgia team was let off right there by Moncrief, which is kind of wild to see. But I was at Bama in 2022. I don't even think it can compare to yesterday. And it shouldn't, because Texas has now turned the program around. They went to the college football playoff last year, and the best program in college football currently was in town. I mean, that is what Texas built all this for, in night game, with game day, in Austin's booming city. And that was talked about by recruits' parent today. And just everything around it with the hype with the game, that's the way it should have been. And I'm just telling you, and that's why the people are concerned about recruiting. That didn't hurt Texas in recruiting. Now, that may hurt you in 3 recruitments head-to-head against Georgia. But it didn't hurt recruiting as a whole. It helps recruiting as a whole, as long as it's like last year after the Oklahoma loss. It's the same thing. As long as you go on and have a good season. What you can't do now is end up 9-3 and limping to the finish line and losing to A&M and not looking good doing it. There's a scenario out there that hurts you a little bit in recruiting. This loss last night wasn't it. This actually helps you in recruiting, maybe with the exception of a couple of guys you go head-to-head on Georgia in their own state, where they say, we got to have this guy. So Texas, you aren't getting him, period. And maybe a couple like that. But it was a great show for recruiting last night, other than the offensive product on the field. But again, defensive players loved it. Defensive players that already liked what they were seeing from Texas, they were impressed with Texas last night.
Yeah. Jeff Carey with a quick comment. We have not beaten anybody in the top 35. That's true, Jeff. Fred Johnson, thank you for the super chat as well. Last thing I want to say here is, guys, thank you all for joining us tonight. Myself, Rod Babers, Jerry Hamilton, always enjoy visiting with you guys on Sunday night after a game. Make sure you check us out tomorrow. We'll be back with coffee and football in the morning, as well as Steve Sarkisian has his presser around 11:30. We'll be back for that. Rod, you and Coach Shipley and CJ have the winning drive tomorrow around 3:15. So for all of us here tonight, we'll talk more Longhorn football all day tomorrow. Hope you guys can join us when you can. For Rod, Jerry, and our producer, Matt Hudson, I'm Bobby Burton. You guys have a good week or good night, and have a good week coming up. Hook 'em.
Welcome.